Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show. Discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Welcome one and all. It is time for the Books That Make You show. I'm your host, Desiree Duffy. And today we're talking about books that make you skeptical of UFOs. The United States government has come out and basically said UFOs or UAPs, Unidentified Ariel Phenomenon as they're being called now. I don't know. I like UFOs. That's back in my day. But they basically are saying they're real. We've got the footage. Former President Obama recently confirmed on late night TV saying, and I quote, what is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there is footage and records of objects in the sky, and we don't know exactly what they are. 60 Minutes aired an episode with interviews from pilots and government officials going on the record. There's footage from the Navy off the coast of San Diego, and no one's denying it anymore. So I guess UFOs are real. But our guest here today is an expert on such topics. He is skeptic Michael Shermer, and he's not so quick to jump on this UFO bandwagon. He is a New York Times bestselling author. Dr. Michael Shermer has written countless books, such as, and I'm only going to list a few, The Moral Arc, Why People Believe Weird Things, The Believing Brain, The Science of Good and Evil, and his latest is called Giving the Devil His Due. He is also the publisher of Skeptic magazine, host of the podcast, The Michael Shermer Show, president fellow at Chapman University, and you've probably seen him on countless documentaries and shows whenever they need to call in that skeptic for a different perspective. Michael Shermer, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Desiree. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Okay.
I like your little alien behind you there over your right shoulder with the spacecraft. Yes, it's always interesting to me that the aliens are portrayed as bipedal primates, as if this would have evolved on some other planet in exactly parallel to what human evolution developed on Earth, which is extremely unlikely. So right there is our first cut for skepticism, whatever the aliens are going to look like, because I do think there's a good chance that there is extraterrestrial intelligence somewhere out there in the cosmos, but that they've come here is a separate question. And, you know, the idea that they've gone through a long evolutionary process for billions of years, like we did on Earth, and end up with something like what you see in the aliens that are similar to us, is very unlikely. And most SETI scientists, people like Carl Sagan, for example, always, consider the aliens to be so different from us that we probably can't even conceive of it. Something like an octopus, or some weird creature in the sea, or some land intelligence that is not going to be a bipedal primate. So I think right there, the indication is that the fact that people see something that looks like us indicates that it's probably more in their minds than in reality.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the diversity of life here on Earth, you mentioned maybe it looks more like an octopus. Actually, squid are pretty intelligent, they've discovered.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But
dolphins, whales.
Right. But could they ever create something to get out of even the ocean? It's almost like they've got another barrier to ever venturing out into space. And we got these cool opposable thumb things that give us the ability to make things. Yeah.
So the counter to my argument I just made is called convergent evolution. That there's a convergence of certain body types. For example, if you live in the sea, you have to have a fusiform body to slide through the thick medium of water. Or if you make a living in the air, you need something like wings to be able to move around. And on land, you got to have something like legs and arms. If you're quadruped, you got 4 legs, but if you can get bipedal, then you can free up the other 2 limbs for something like, making tools or whatever. But again, this has only happened a couple times, in the last, say, 6 million years since we diverged from the great apes like chimps and gorillas. There's been maybe a dozen hominid species, all of which went extinct except us. And, some of them used tools, some of them made fire, so that's the argument, that you may end up with something like that convergent evolution on some other planet. Well, maybe, but they estimate somewhere like between 1 billion and 10 billion species have ever lived on Earth, and that maybe a dozen of the billions, ended up like us. It, again, tells us it's a long shot that whatever the aliens are like, they're going to look like us.
Yeah. Well, and even if you go back to the Drake equation, which basically says there's so many millions of planets that are like Earth out there, therefore there must be some that have intelligent life. It's based on the assumption that intelligence is the goal somehow of evolution. And guess what? It's not. We just happen to be intelligent because that helped us adapt to our environment. Who knows what's going on?
Yes, well, and it's a cost benefit analysis. Brains are super expensive to run. Our brains consume something like 30% of the energy of our bodies. And so that takes a lot of calories. And so there has to be a huge payoff to have a big brain like that. And again, even amongst primates, ours is the only one with this gigantic brain. And it's still not clear. There's no consensus in science of why we evolved such big brains. Because, in fact, most species do just fine with tiny little brains, or even no brains at all, just little, neural modules that just kind of, run the limbs and control the basic functions of survival. Most organisms do fine without what we consider higher intelligence. So it's not clear that that's, an inevitability to evolution. Although, as you point out, the law of large numbers, you got 100 billion to 1 trillion galaxies, every one of which has hundreds of billions of stars, most of which have planets. So as you start making the cuts, you see, well, you're still going to end up with a huge number of Earth-like sized planets in the habitable zone around their G-type stars, similar to ours, and so on, just because there's so many numbers that it would be really quite amazing if there were no intelligent life anywhere in the cosmos except for us. That we're the only ones, or we're the first ones. That does seem unlikely. But again, this is a separate question from what everybody's talking about recently, and that is that they've come here. And it's good to remember the distances between the stars. It's so vast, it's almost inconceivable. So you have to use analogies. For example, in our galaxy, if our sun was the size of an orange in LA, where I'm at, and the nearest star would be an orange in Chicago. It's 2,000 miles away. There's just mostly empty space. And, when galaxies pass through each other, you see these massive computer models of these things happening. Yeah, but there's almost no stellar collisions because the stars are so far apart. Or a second analogy, the Voyager spacecraft is hurtling away at something like, 50, 60,000 miles an hour. If it were going to the closest star, the Alpha Centauri system, it's not. But if it were, it would take 70,000 years to get there. I mean, it's just vast distances of just nothingness. And, how would the aliens do that? Well, of course, maybe they have some super advanced propulsion system, and then you get a lot of the kind of sci-fi hand waving. Well, then they figured out faster than light travelers. Okay. But there's a lot of assumptions in that hand waving that, it's not clear that that's going to happen.
Well, okay, I'm going to just totally play devil's advocate because I have to. So the footage we're seeing is showing these things going really, really fast. So fast that they should be breaking the sound barrier. They're not. So people are theorizing maybe it's more like interdimensional travel. Or maybe these things aren't alien per se, but they're something else. Maybe they came from under the sea. Maybe it's technology that China or Russia developed. So just because they're seeing stuff, this is why they're calling them UAPs now, because it could be something. We just don't know what it is, right?
Yeah, that's the narrative we're hearing now. Sorry, and the problem is that there's a lot of work being done in those descriptions of things moving faster than aerodynamically possible, or pulling G forces. This all assumes that the things we're looking at in these grainy, blurry videos and photographs are actual objects out there that are moving like we think they're moving, as opposed to what we think they very probably are. And here I turn to the work of my columnist, Mick West, for Skeptic, who covers these UFO stuff for us. He has his own site, Metabunk, that's well worth going to, in which each of the videos has to be deconstructed carefully. Now, we can start with the simplest ones, like I'll show you this picture. This is from Fox News. Tucker Carlson's really into this stuff, and he's got Lou Elizondo on there. And, if you saw that object there, just without the context of UFOs, you were just at the beach and you saw this thing float by, what would you think? You'd think, oh, it's a Mylar balloon. It's a kid's balloon, right?
Yeah.
Now, that they would include that in the list of unexplained, unidentified aerial phenomenon as something that they can't explain already makes me very leery of the whole enterprise. That, you would look at that and think, not Mylar balloon. No, I'm not saying that all of these videos, let's say there's 4 or 5 that are most prominently shown, are all Mylar balloons. They're probably not all Mylar balloons. As Mick has shown, it depends on which ones you're looking at. Like there's the green video with the triangle shaped. Okay. Now this was filmed at night with a night camera from a ship in the Pacific Ocean beneath the flight pattern into LAX at Los Angeles International Airport, coming from Hawaii or Asia. Okay. So now right off the bat, it's like, well, you're underneath a bunch of planes flying over, and the triangular shaped UFO is blinking exactly like a commercial airliner blinks. And why would aliens, or if it was Russian or Chinese assets, why would they put blinking lights on their drones to spy on us? I mean, this makes no sense at all. And as Mick showed, it blinks exactly the same pattern that commercial jets blink at. All right. Much more likely is that, at night, it's slightly out of focus, and the lens aperture is a kind of a triangular shape when you shut the so-called retina down, or the aperture of the lens down. It forms a little triangle shape, and that forms that kind of blurry triangular green blinking light. Okay, so that's 2, right? Already we're down the path of like, oh, this is a boring, mundane explanation. And so the other ones like Tic Tac and Go Fast, let's say Go Fast, Mick showed that if you do some basic triangulation with basic trigonometry of where that object is in the video, it looks like it's just hovering above the ocean, flying along at some massive thousands of miles an hour. Which, how is this possible? And then it whatever disappears. Well, but it's not. It's actually much higher, and it's much closer to the plane, and therefore floating along at maybe 50, 60 knots. But because it's higher up, from the angle of the camera, it looks like it's just above the ocean going really fast. Okay, that's 3. All right. And then in one of the other ones, the so-called Tic Tac, or the gimbal, where the thing seems to go like this. This is a funky shaped thing. It seems to rotate. But as Mick shows, that the whole scene is rotating, not just the object. If you look at the edges of the video, it's also rotating, the sky and so on. So it's the camera that's rotating, not the object. Okay. And then finally, so that's 4. Finally, there's the zoom one. Okay. So here you have this, the camera focuses on this object, and all of a sudden it zooms off really fast. And that's the claim. Oh, it pulls all these G's, makes no sonic boom. How is this possible? Must be advanced technology or whatever. But Mick shows that in the video itself, you see the little zoom, and it goes from 1 to 2. The camera just zoomed in on the object really fast. And at that moment, that's when it zooms off. And so Mick then slowed it down to the zoom from 2 back to 1 in the replay of the camera and of the film. And then it just kind of goes off as it was. There's nothing to explain. Okay. So that's pretty much it. So we would be shocked if the government comes out and says, well, we just can't explain these. I mean, here, if Mick West, a game developer and a really smart guy, can sit down in his garage and figure all this out, you're telling me the Pentagon can't do this, the Navy can't do this, the CIA, the FBI, whoever should be investigating these threats to our airspace, they can't figure these things out? Come on.
Well,
they gotta know.
And okay, and that leads me to something else. So you're going directly where I want to take you to. So why now? Why is the government? Why is the Pentagon? Why are they doing this now? Is there some kind of a reason? Because it's been played like UFOs. This phenomenon has been the conspiracy theory of all conspiracy theories for a long, long time. why suddenly, and maybe now I'm being conspiracy theorist in this, but why would they release this now in this way? What is that possibly doing to our psyches?
Well, first of all, it wasn't just released. These videos have been around for years. They keep getting recycled. So several years ago, so the two big sources now are, 60 Minutes covered it and the New York Times, Okay, the New York Times did not do an investigation. The author of that story was Leslie Kean, who is a pro-ufologist. And by the way, she's totally into the paranormal, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. When you die, you go to heaven. She's into the whole thing. So UFOs is just part of her worldview, and she just accepts it all uncritically. And for her, this is not an investigative journalist piece by New York Times journalists who don't have a dog in the fight. They don't have an opinion on it. They're just looking in to see what's going on. That's not what that article was. Leslie Kean is already a pro-ufologist writing in a way that supports it. Now, what the videos were, they keep getting recycled because, and here you have the political angle with Harry Reid. One of Harry Reid's billionaire donors is this guy Bigelow, who has been promoting this whole thing about disclosure and this his whole To the Stars Academy with celebrities and so on, and the Blink rock star, I forget his name now, who is helping to promote this. It's money driving it, and so it's not like a congressman stood up and said, hey, you know what? We've got a problem. And I've just realized this. No, this is, again, a pro-ufologist giving money to a politician saying, look, we need to investigate that. And he goes, yeah, okay, sure. And, people say, well, $22 million, they spent on investigating this. $22 million in the government, in a military budget, that's nothing. That's like the cost overrun. That's like a tank of gas for each plane on a single sortie on an aircraft carrier. It's nothing. Right. So it's not like this is a big new issue at all.
And in a World War II, we have people that are believing in QAnon and so many conspiracy theories and things going on. Does this somehow, it's like, okay, well, if UFOs are real, well, maybe Bigfoot is real, maybe QAnon is real. It kind of like wears us down a little bit psychologically, because then we wonder what else might be real. Do you see something like that as being possible?
Yes. Well, that word "real" is doing a lot of work there in those sentences. When these ufologists are talking about, 60 Minutes said they're real, and the New York Times said they're real, and the government said they're real. No, what they said was that the videos are real. That is, the videos are not made by some kid with on his laptop, using CGI technology. That the videos themselves are real, and that's all it means. It means nothing. It doesn't mean. But the problem is most people, their brains autocorrect from real video to real aliens, or real Russian or Chinese assets. Now, let's go to that one. Now, I talked about the unlikelihood of aliens arriving here. What about that they're Russian or Chinese technology? Impossible. There is no way that the Russians or Chinese could develop such advanced technology that we wouldn't know about it. That's just not how it works. It would be like if we had biplanes and all of a sudden the Chinese and Russians had stealth bombers. There's no way we would know about this, or that we're still using rotary phones and the Russians and Chinese all of a sudden have smartphones. Where did that come from? How did we not know that? And so just use a few examples like that. Rocketry. Every advanced nation that wants to develop that wanted to develop that technology did so in parallel. The Russians and the Americans in the 1940s and 50s were experimenting with rocketry, and we barely beat the Russians to the moon. The Manhattan Project, the most secret project ever in American history, maybe in all of history. And still, the Russians had an atomic bomb 4 years after we had ours. How is that possible? They stole it. They had a spy at Los Alamos, Klaus Fuchs. And that's how it works. Just think about the intellectual property measures that high-tech companies like Apple and Google go through, and they sue everybody under that they can for stealing anything. And yet still, all cell phones today, they're all the same.
Yeah.
How is that possible? Because that's how technology evolves. Innovation happens in parallel, built on technologies that came just before and just before and just before and so on. And everybody copies each other. They reverse engineer, they steal, they spy, they infiltrate now through the internet, intellectual property, and so on. So there's no way that the Chinese or Russians can be doing anything remotely like what we're seeing in these videos as representing advanced technology. And somehow we just dumbfoundedly, stupidly, completely missed what would be the equivalent of centuries of technological and scientific development. Impossible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there is some really cool stuff, and it seems like it's just, maybe we haven't tapped into it when you look at magnetic levitation and some of that stuff. So you almost got to wonder, is there just something out there we haven't really tapped into? Because we can make stuff kind of hover in a similar way on a very small scale. So it could happen.
Yeah. So, okay. So there you're asking, is it possible we could build technologies like this? Yes, maybe. My point is that, let's say, hover technology through, this electromagnetism, these experiments. I'm spacing on the name of that now, but but again, Japanese and the French and Americans and Russia, we all have that technology. We're all pretty parallel with each other, and so again, it's not likely that we're going to be caught completely by surprise. Even drones. Just look at how much drones have changed in the last 10, 15 years, and how now there's a dozen companies that produce these super lightweight, super fast drones, which, by the way, zip around as if almost they're defying G's, but they're not. They're just super lightweight, and they can turn on a dime even at high speed. And if you look at some of these videos of drones, it looks like if it was kind of blurry and grainy and you couldn't quite make out, it would look like one of these videos we've been seeing. And yet they're just lightweight drones. But all the companies who develop these drones, and they all have patents, copyright protections, intellectual property rights, and so on, they're all the same, right? Yeah. How does that happen? Because that's how innovation really works.
Okay. So it can't happen because we know about it. Okay. That's an argument I'll take for now. I want to circle back to the government officials in the 60 Minutes episode. I get we're appealing to authority because you would think that these pilots have seen everything. So going back to what you said, why wouldn't people at the Pentagon and the government be saying, well, yeah, that's just, a reflection of the light or whatever? Why would these pilots come forward and put their careers on the line in saying that they saw these and they think they're UFOs?
Okay, well, we don't know what the government's actually doing. They've been very quiet about all this. They just keep promising this big report's coming. Now the next one is supposed to come in June. Well, we'll see. My guess is they have been talking to them, and my guess is they've been looking at everything that's online of what people are saying about these things. I'd be surprised if they weren't. And so that the video objects we're seeing in these videos were also sighted, at least some of them visually, by pilots, and seen on radar is kind of a corroboration that there's something actually out there. That's true. So again, the videos are real; they're not CGI or fake, and it's not just a lens flare or the a thing that's inside the video itself that's not actually out there in space. This would seem to confirm that the case, but again, no one's denying that. It's a Mylar balloon, it's a balloon zipping across, or it's a plane that's moving away, and that's the jet, the heat from the engine that's kind of blurry in the video, and so on. So the thing is out there. The thing that's being videotaped is real. So I assume that the pilots, are not hallucinating. But it's important to remember, the kind of the history of ufology, all the way back to the 50s. Most of the reports you see is that the thing that we're talking about was seen by the police captain or a military officer, or it was a medical doctor. This is always in the narrative because it elevates the quality of the eyewitness account. The fact is, nobody is immune from illusions. I could show you or anybody. I could show the president or a general or a pilot. Any of the 3D visual illusions you see in any psych textbook, and they'd all be just deceived by the illusion, because they're designed to trick the brain. There's nothing special about a pilot's brain or a police captain's brain or whatever. That, all our brains are wired the same way and susceptible to illusions. Distortion of distance. It's hard to tell, especially when it's dark or you have kind of an amorphous background like an ocean. It's really hard to detect size. For example, you'll see these reports, the spacecraft was 350 feet wide. How do you know? I mean, there's no yardstick out there by measuring it. You're just guessing. And you see this all the time. I'll read you a little excerpt from Leslie Kean's book, which is called UFOs. And so she writes, and just to give it the full title here, generals, pilots, and government officials. There it is. Go on the record. It's as if they have special visual and processing that, they don't. They're humans. Okay. Anyway, so she asked readers to consider with an open and truly skeptical mind that such sightings represent a solid physical phenomena that appears to be under intelligent control and is capable of speeds, maneuverability, and luminosity beyond current known technology. That the U.S. government routinely ignores UFOs and, when pressed, issues false explanations. And that the hypothesis that UFOs are of extraterrestrial or interdimensional origin is a rational one and must be taken into account given the data we have. Okay, mind you, this was written, 2016, I think, 2015, long before all this. And so that's how long this story has actually been around. So she cites one example. So so here, by the way, is the difference between believers and skeptics. She says, according to Kean, roughly 90 to 95% of all UFO sightings can be explained as, quote, weather balloons, flares, sky lanterns, planes flying in formation, secret military aircraft, birds reflecting the sun, planes reflecting the sun, blimps, helicopters, the planets Venus or Mars, meteors or meteorites, space junk, satellites, swamp gas, spinning eddies, sundogs, ball lightning, ice crystals, reflected light off clouds, lights on the ground, or lights reflected on a cockpit window. So that's her speaking, right? So this entire extraterrestrial hypothesis is based on a residue of data left over after the above list has been exhausted. So the only difference between me and Leslie Kean or any UFO is this 5%, right? That's not much. Mm-hmm. So she opens her exploration on a very solid ground with the Major General's firsthand chronicle of one of the most vivid and well-documented UFO cases ever, the UFO wave over Belgium from 1989 to 1990. So here is Major General Wilfred de Brouwer's recounting of the sightings. Quote, hundreds of people saw a majestic triangular craft with a span of approximately 120 feet. There it is, specifically 120 feet, and powerful beaming spotlights moving very slowly without making any significant noise, but in several cases accelerating to very high speeds. Okay. Now, according to de Brouwer's narrative, to Kean's summary of the same event, now here's Kean describing what I just read. Common sense tells us that if a government had developed a huge craft that can hover motionless only a few hundred feet up and then speed off in the blink of an eye, all without making a sound, such technology would have revolutionized both air travel and modern warfare, and probably physics as well. Okay, so then I ask you to compare de Brouwer's account with what she just wrote, summarizing it. And then I write, note how a 120-foot craft becomes huge, how moving very slowly changes to can hover motionless, how without making any significant noise shifts to without making a sound, and how accelerating to very high speeds transforms into speed off in the blink of an eye. And then I conclude, this language transmutation, probably unintentional, is common in UFO narratives, making it harder for scientists to provide natural explanations. In other words, really, people are distorting. They're changing the language that makes it impossible for us to explain. And that's just not actually what they're even seeing or even saying that they're seeing.
Right, right. That is an excellent point. And, I think too, people just want to believe. They will allow themselves to take those, those jumps and play a little bit of verbal gymnastics with things. And let's face it, there's only one thing to me that's more terrifying than the thought that there's aliens out there. And that's the thought that there's nothing out there and we are truly alone. There's this sense of kind of like when we believe in God or religion or angels or, whatever, that there's something out there that somehow is like our big brother looking out for us, that comforts us in a way.
Yeah, I call these deities for atheists and sky gods for skeptics. In a way, it's kind of a secular religion. I don't mean this literally, it's not a religion, but it's like a secular religion because it provides sort of a godhead, that we're not alone, that there's somebody out there. Not only there's something else out there, but they come here, they know about us. They're watching us, that's very much, what religions are all about. And, to me, then touches on, human psychology, why we believe these things in the first place. So I think that's part of it as well. You also touched the way you phrased that about conspiracy theories in general. The only thing scarier than that, there's like the Illuminati or the New World Order, or somebody's behind the scenes pulling the string, to run governments and economies and so on, is that nobody's in charge. It's like, what? Nobody really understands the economy or how political systems work. These things just kind of grind along. And after the fact, political scientists and economists kind of try to explain it using causal models and statistics and so on. But really predicting, virtually impossible. As economists joke, economists predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions, right? I mean, no one's in charge, right? No one knows what's going to happen. And, that's discombobulating to the human mind. We want to know what's the pattern, what's real, what causes what, so I can, kind of wrap my mind around it and know what's going to happen, so I feel less anxious about the future.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're running up against the clock. Michael, is there anything else you want to add? Anything that you want to touch on that we didn't get to?
Well, I do think that, the idea of there being extraterrestrial intelligence is a cool idea. I mean, who would not like that to be true? And I'm not against it. People say, well, you're a skeptic, so you're dogmatic. No, I mean, if it turned out that we are being visited, that would be fantastic. I would be the first to go, yeah, okay. But, again, it's so unlikely that, it's an extraordinary claim. And as we say, the ECRI principle, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So why is the evidence always so unextraordinary? It's always these kind of grainy videos and blurry photographs and, anecdotes and stories about things that go bump in the night and they can't quite make it out. And, if it's true, come on, let's have the actual spaceship. There it is, the alien body, not some faked video that was, filmed in a studio, but a real body, right? And so, show me the body, show me the spacecraft, and I will believe. Otherwise, it's reasonable to be skeptical, even while saying they could very well be out there, but they haven't come here yet, or maybe they have. But if they have, I got to have better evidence than what we're seeing so far.
Yeah. I hear you. It's kind of like Dawkins' scale from 1 to 7. You sounds like you might be somewhere not necessarily agnostic, but closer to the 7 side of being skeptical.
Yes, and I go even further than that. I say that if we did discover extraterrestrial intelligences, they're not going to be really close to us on a technological or civilizational timescale. They're going to be vastly ahead of us. Okay, they won't be behind us because we won't discover them unless we go to some planet and find some earthworm level extraterrestrials. But so if we encounter them, they're going to be super far advanced. Not 10 years ahead of us or 50 years ahead of us, but like 1 million years ahead of us. And look at the progress we've made in the last century in science and technology. Extrapolate that out 100,000 years, where they could create life forms and geoengineer planets and so on. What would they appear to us to be? Well, like if you showed up to Neanderthals and you said, hey, look at this thing I got. I got this smartphone. They think you're God. I mean, you are a deity. You are omniscient. You are omnipotent. You're able to do these amazing. So that's why I call them sky gods for skeptics or deities for atheists. That if we discover extraterrestrial intelligences, they would be indistinguishable from what we conceive of to be God.
Well, maybe we just came full circle. Maybe you just answered it. We're going into Eric von Däniken territory, right? Chariots of the gods. Maybe that's what it's been all along, is our alien overlords just kind of checking in on their experiment from time to time.
I'll tell you, I read that book in college, and it was so cool. I thought, oh man, if this is true, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I started taking courses on archaeology and anthropology. It's like, this guy just made this stuff up. There are explanations for all these little artifacts that he goes through around the world. There's archaeologists that do this for a living, and they go, no, that's not what that's actually depicted. It's not an astronaut. It's actually this. Well, it's like a sky god, right? Of course, that's his point, is that they didn't have the language, so they called them gods or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, no, I don't think Van Däniken's right. But and again, as Sagan always said, it would be fantastic if it's true, but we really need better evidence than what we have.
Right. And it's fun to imagine, and it's fun because it inspires so many sci-fi and fantasy writers to give us really great stories for us to enjoy, and so much more. Michael Shermer, can you tell people where to find you online, give people details on your books as well? I know we only touched on some of them a little bit, but you have, this is your latest one, Giving the Devil His Due. Where can people find it, find out more about you?
Yes, skeptic.com is the webpage for the magazine. Here's our magazine, by the way. This issue now is 13 years old, Roswell. How a modest military adventure in 1947 was turned into a great whopper of a UFO tale. That's very indicative of what we're going through now. So skeptic.com, michaelshermer.com. Of course, Amazon carries all my books. You just type in Michael Shermer and they'll all pop up there.
That is true. History repeating itself. Dr. Michael Shermer, thank you for being here today.
All right, Desiree, nice to see you. Thanks for having me on your show.
You bet. You bet. And thank you, everybody, for being here as well. You can find out more about us on the website, booksthatmakeyou.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and, of course, YouTube. Until next time, all of my bibliophile friends, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.